Story 1: The Vanishing Passenger. I was driving home late at night after a long shift at work. The highway was deserted, and the only sound was the hum of my engine. I kept my windows slightly down to keep myself awake, the cool breeze helping to stave off the creeping fatigue. About 30 miles from home, I saw her, a woman standing by the side of the road, waving her arms desperately. She looked panicked, her hair disheveled, her dress torn. Against my better judgment, I slowed down and rolled down the window. "Are you okay?" I asked. She nodded quickly and said, "Please, I need a ride. My car broke down and I don't know what to do." I hesitated but eventually unlocked the door. She climbed in, sitting silently as I resumed driving. I tried to make small talk, but she didn't say much, just gave short answers in a shaky voice. Her hands trembled in her lap, and her eyes darted nervously out the window. After a few minutes, I noticed something odd. Her reflection in the rearview mirror didn't match her posture. While she sat facing forward, her reflection appeared to be staring directly at me. My stomach turned, but I tried to keep calm. I told myself I was just tired, that my eyes were playing tricks on me. But then, in the mirror, her reflection smiled, a wide, chilling grin that didn't match her face at all. When I looked back at her, she wasn't smiling. She was staring straight ahead, her face pale and emotionless. My heart raced as I tried to focus on the road. "Are we close to your destination?" I asked, my voice trembling. She didn't respond. Instead, she whispered something I couldn't understand. The sound sent chills down my spine, like nails on a chalkboard. When I glanced at the mirror again, her reflection was gone. I slammed on the brakes and turned to look at the back seat. It was empty. The next morning, I told a coworker about what had happened. His face went pale. "You picked up the vanishing passenger," he said. "People have seen her on that stretch of highway for years. They say she died in a car accident, and now she's looking for someone to take her home." Story 2: The Endless Road. I was on a cross-country road trip, driving alone through a remote stretch of desert highway. It was the kind of place where you could drive for hours without seeing another car or a single sign of civilization. Around midnight, I noticed something strange. The road ahead seemed to stretch endlessly into the darkness, with no curves, no intersections, and no landmarks. I thought I was imagining it at first, but as the hours passed, I realized I wasn't getting anywhere. My GPS had lost signal, and my phone's clock seemed to be stuck at 2:13 a.m. Panic set in as I tried to make sense of it. I turned around, but the road behind me was the same, an endless stretch of black asphalt disappearing into the horizon. My fuel gauge hadn't moved, even though I'd been driving for what felt like hours. Then I saw the headlights. A car appeared behind me, its bright beams glaring in my rearview mirror. Relieved, I slowed down, hoping to flag them down for help. But as they got closer, I realized something was wrong. The car had no driver. It sped past me, its engine roaring, and vanished into the darkness ahead. Moments later, it reappeared in my rearview mirror, as if it had turned around without me noticing. It followed me closely, its headlights flashing erratically as if trying to blind me. Terrified, I floored the accelerator, but no matter how fast I went, the car stayed right behind me. Then it pulled up beside me, matching my speed. When I glanced over, I saw my own face staring back at me from the driver's seat. I don't remember much after that. I woke up the next morning parked by the side of the road, my gas tank nearly empty. The endless road was gone, replaced by a normal stretch of highway. To this day, I can't explain what happened, or how I got out. Story 3: The Hitchhiker in Red. There's an old legend in my town about a hitchhiker who appears on a certain road every Christmas Eve. They say she wears a red coat and carries a single suitcase. If you pick her up, she'll lead you to something you'll regret. I never believed the story until last year. I was driving home from a Christmas party late at night, slightly tipsy but sober enough to drive. The snow was falling heavily and the road was almost deserted. That's when I saw her, a woman in a red coat standing by the side of the road, holding a suitcase. She didn't wave or signal for a ride. She just stood there, staring at me as I approached. Against my better judgment, I pulled over and rolled down the window. "Do you need help?" I asked. She nodded silently and climbed into the passenger seat without a word. Her suitcase rested on her lap, and she held it tightly as if it contained something precious. The ride was unnervingly quiet. She didn't speak, and every time I glanced at her, she was staring straight ahead. But then I noticed something odd. Her reflection in the side mirror wasn't moving. While she sat perfectly still in the car, her reflection turned its head toward me, its eyes wide and unblinking. Terrified, I pulled over and told her I couldn't take her any further. She got out without protest, taking her suitcase with her. But as I drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw her standing in the middle of the road, staring after me. The next day, I found out that stretch of road had been closed for years after a deadly accident involving a woman in a red coat. They say her body was never found, only her suitcase sitting by the side of the road. Story 4. The Radio Signal. I was driving home late one night, flipping through radio stations to stay awake. Most of the stations were static, but then I found one that was playing an eerie, slow melody. The music was haunting, like something out of an old horror movie. Then the voice came on. It was deep and distorted, and it said, "This is a special broadcast for the one driving alone tonight." I froze. It felt like the voice was speaking directly to me. I turned the radio off, but the voice continued, now coming from the car speakers. "You can't turn me off," it said, laughing. I tried to focus on the road, but the voice kept talking. It described my car, my route, even the color of my jacket. Then it said, "There's someone in your back seat." I glanced in the rearview mirror, my heart racing. At first I saw nothing. But then, just for a moment, I saw a shadow, a figure sitting perfectly still. I slammed on the brakes and jumped out of the car. The back seat was empty, but the voice on the radio was laughing louder now. "You can't escape," it said. I drove the rest of the way home in silence, but every time I turned a corner, I swore I saw a shadow following me. Story 5. The Bridge of Shadows. There's a bridge on the edge of town that no one drives over after dark. They say it's cursed, that once you cross it, you might not come back. One night, I was driving home late and decided to take a shortcut over the bridge. The moment I set my tires on it, the air grew cold, and the street lights on either side flickered and went out. Halfway across, my car stalled. The engine sputtered and died, leaving me stranded in the middle of the bridge. That's when I saw them, shadows moving in the darkness, too fast to be human. One by one, they emerged from the fog, figures with no faces, their hollow eyes glowing faintly. They surrounded the car, pressing their hands against the windows. I couldn't hear them, but I could feel their presence, suffocating and cold. Then I saw her. A woman standing at the edge of the bridge, her face hidden beneath a veil. She raised her hand and pointed at me, and suddenly, the shadows began pounding on the car. The engine roared to life just as the windshield cracked. I slammed on the gas and sped across the bridge, the shadows vanishing the moment I reached the other side. When I looked in my rearview mirror, the bridge was gone.